picture this, all right. A party. Like a seriously insane party.
Oh, yeah.
Roasted peacock, quail eggs, champagne flowing like water.
Sounds fancy.
Yeah, no kidding.
Huh.
But hold on, this wasn't just some random blowout. This was the Shah of Iran's 2500th anniversary bash back in '71.
Wow.
5 hours, 6 courses, all happening at the ruins of Persepolis, no less.
The ruins.
Yeah, they went all out. Flew in golden caviar from Paris, built this massive custom tent city for thousands of guests. Cost a fortune.
So we're talking serious extravagance here.
And it's kind of ironic, right? This whole event meant to show off Iran's power. It ended up kind of backfiring.
You think?
Big time. I mean, it really became this symbol of like how disconnected the Shah was from his people. And guess what? It kind of foreshadowed his downfall.
Interesting.
Yeah. Which brings us to our deep dive today. The last Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. Talk about a life, huh? This guy went from like a regular dude to Shah at 22, ruled for almost 40 years.
During some pretty crazy times, too.
Totally. And get this, Iran basically went from a pawn of foreign powers to a major player in the Middle East, all under his watch.
Yeah, and it's full of contradictions, right? He pushes for this super fast modernization, all thanks to that oil money.
Right.
But a lot of his own people, they're left feeling, well, kind of left behind.
Feeling the resentment.
Exactly.
And he does try to modernize, to be fair. There's this thing called the White Revolution, his big reform plan.
Ambitious, for sure.
It was redistributing land, giving women the right to vote, even these huge literacy programs.
Some of it worked, too, like education, women's rights, made some progress.
Yeah.
But the way he did it, sometimes he just bulldozed over tradition, alienated people, like the clergy, big power players back then.
Right, right. And here's the other thing, right? We talked about the Shah's party, his crazy spending, but that was like his whole life.
The good love.
Luxurious palaces, private jets, you name it. He loved the fancy stuff, no holding back.
And that spending, it kind of blurred the lines between his money and the country's money.
Yeah, people noticed that, right? Like, hey, where's all the money going?
Definitely. And it made him look even more out of touch. Plus, he was obsessed with the military.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Massive spending on weapons, all that. And meanwhile, social programs, the economy, they suffer.
So it's like modernization, but only for a select few.
You got it. And that, my friend, is the key to understanding why he eventually fell.
So it wasn't just the parties, the spending itself.
No, it was what it represented. Right. This ruler, more in tune with Western elites than his own people.
And let's not forget, he wasn't exactly Mr. Nice Guy. This was an authoritarian leader.
Oh!
I mean, Savak, his secret police, notorious.
Oh, yeah. Savak was brutal. Arrests, imprisonment, torture, you name it, all to silence dissent.
Silence anyone who disagreed.
Exactly. Created this atmosphere of fear, total paranoia, and then he goes and abolishes all political parties.
All of them.
Yep. Everyone had to join his party, the National Resurgence Party. No more pretending to be democratic.
Wow, total control.
You got it. And that's the problem, right? It's like he built this echo chamber around himself.
No one to tell him the truth.
Exactly. Surrounded by yes men, totally shielded from what was really going on. Like, he seriously thought the protesters were Islamic Marxists.
Islamic Marxists.
That's what he called them. It shows you how clueless he was.
So, you have this, like, perfect storm brewing. Inequality, repression, and a leader who's blind to it all. What finally sets everything off?
You'd never guess. It all starts with a newspaper article.
An article, really?
Yep, January 1978. This article comes out, slams Ayatollah Khomeini, this exiled cleric who was super critical of the Shah.
Oh, wow.
The article mocked him, questioned his religious credentials. It was a big mistake.
Boy.
Khomeini's followers, they were furious. Protests erupt in Qum, this holy city.
And that was just the beginning, right?
Oh, yeah, just the tip of the iceberg.
So one seemingly insignificant event.
One little spark sets off this chain reaction that ultimately brings the Shah down. And here's where it gets really interesting. Shia Islam has this 40-day mourning cycle, right? It ended up playing a huge role in the whole thing.
Really? How so? I'm not super familiar with Shia Islam.
So basically, when an important figure dies, they mourn intensely for 40 days, then have this big public ceremony.
Right.
And that cycle, it became like the rhythm of the protests. Each cycle would build up more anger, more momentum.
So each 40 days, bang, another protest.
Exactly. Crack down on one, 40 days later, there's another one, even bigger. Grief, anger, defiance, it all fed into it. The Shah couldn't stop it.
Wow, a tragic feedback loop.
You got it. And the Shah, his response, it just gets worse, more violent. It just made people even angrier, more determined to get rid of him.
He must have felt the walls closing in. Did he ever try to, like, calm things down, make changes.
He did, but by then it was too late. Tried some reforms, offered some freedoms, released some
Tried to
prisoners.
sound a bit more moderate,
Yeah, even brought in a new prime minister, someone a bit softer.
but it didn't work.
Nope. People had lost faith. They saw it as weakness, not real change. The revolution, it had a life of its own now.
So what could he do at that point? I mean, he was trapped.
Well, January 1979, he flees Iran. Couldn't take the pressure anymore.
It was almost sad, right? This guy, the king of kings, running for his life.
Quite a fall from grace. First Egypt, then Morocco, then the Bahamas, then Mexico. No one really wanted him.
And of course, there's the whole U.S. thing, letting the Shah in for medical treatment. That triggered the hostage crisis.
Oh yeah, huge mistake. Iranian students, furious that the U.S. was protecting the Shah, they stormed the embassy in Tehran.
52 hostages, a standoff for over a year. Relations between the U.S. and Iran destroyed.
And even in exile, the Shah, he's still causing chaos.
It's kind of crazy, right, how even someone so powerful can become this, like, pawn in global politics.
It really shows how personal destinies can have these huge ripple effects, you know?
So the Shah, forced from his throne, dies in Egypt, never going back to Iran. All his plans, his dreams for Iran, gone.
A cautionary tale for sure. Absolute power. Ignoring your people, underestimating consequences, it can all come crashing down.
You know, as we wrap this up, this deep dive into the last Shah, it's incredible, right? All the changes during his time and then everything that happened after.
Yeah, I mean, people are still talking about it, debating it. It makes you think about leadership, about revolutions, all these big forces shaping a country.
It's true. I'll admit, when we started, I was kind of fixated on the Shahs, the lifestyle, the palaces, the whole authoritarian
Brave
thing.
image, yeah.
But now, digging deeper, I see it's so much more complicated. The challenges, the context.
It's easy to simplify, right? Hero, villain, that kind of thing.
Right.
But it's never that simple. The Shah, he was a product of his time,
Right.
History pushing him, his own ambitions.
Thrown into it all so young, too.
Right.
A country struggling with poverty, illiteracy, foreign powers meddling.
And he did believe, that modernizing Iran would make it stronger, safer. But his methods, well...
Not exactly subtle.
And that close relationship with the U.S., it helped him, sure, money, weapons, but...
Made him look like America's puppet.
Exactly. Fed that resentment among Iranians. It's that whole, what do they call it, blowback?
Yeah, trying to stop one thing, you create another problem. The U.S. wanted to contain the Soviets, ended up maybe helping topple the Shah.
The irony, right? And it's a lesson we still haven't fully learned, I think. This whole idea of messing around in other countries.
Thinking we know best.
Yeah, assuming our solutions are the right ones. We need to be smarter about foreign policy, consider all the angles.
So big picture, looking back at the Shah, what are the big lessons here?
I think one is simple but crucial. Listen to your people. The Shah, he had this vision for Iran, but he didn't really get the social, the cultural side.
He underestimated the power of religion, how much people hated foreign influence.
And he thought he could force progress, from the top down. No real dialogue, no listening. That's a recipe for disaster.
And of course, there's the whole power thing. Absolute power corrupts, right? The Shah had his yes men savak, silencing everyone else.
It's like he was in a bubble, no one to challenge him, to tell him the truth. And when you rely on fear and violence to stay in control, well...
It always backfires eventually.
Exactly. And I think the last big takeaway is we need to be honest about history. It's not black and white, good guys, bad guys. That's too easy.
The Shah's story, it's messy, it's full of contradictions, just like real life.
He made choices, some good, some bad. But he was also shaped by forces he couldn't control. We need to remember that, I think, when we look at the past.
So it's not just about judging the Shah, right? It's about understanding him, the whole picture, the complexity.
And hopefully learning from it, all of it, so we can make better choices, build a better future.
Well said. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's a story that I think stays with you.
It does. It makes you think about leadership, about power, about the choices we make as individuals and as a society.
And if this has sparked your curiosity, keep exploring. There's so much more to learn about the Shah, about Iran, about this whole period in history. Thanks again for listening.